Oh, hi there. This is Chandra Easton speaking to you about the great change that's happening on Earth at the moment. This is the third in a series of very brief talks that I'm giving about the astrological influences of the solstice chart. As an astrologer, if I'm trying to understand what's going on the planet, then the best way to do it is to cast the equinox or the solstice charts, which govern a 3-month period. And so I've cast the chart for the 21st or the 22nd of June, depending on whether it's the northern or the southern hemisphere, for 2015. And these charts, they focus they're like a 3-month window to look at different parts of the world. In this third in the series, I'm looking at Philippines, which I've touched on briefly, and New Guinea, which I've also touched on briefly in the second talk. I'll be continuing on to talk about the Pacific Ocean, particularly the South Pacific, and then I'll move through to New Zealand. The tools that I'm using are the astrological charts, but I'm also a spiritual healer and a clairvoyant, a visionary, and so I'll be mentioning different visions and impressions that I've had, some of them recent, some of them further afield, as I attempt to enumerate the possibilities of what may be happening in this part of the world in this 3-month period from the middle of June through until the third week of September 2015. So I'll start with the chart based on the Philippines. When I cast the chart, then I can wrap it around the planet and zero in astrologically through a tool known as astrocartography, and I've cast this chart for the summer solstice it is in the Philippines, focused around Manila. And what I see is the planet Pluto sitting on the midheaven. Now, when Pluto sits on the midheaven for a national chart, it's pretty much the end of the government in power. So either the government is corrupt, or the government are failing the people, or the government are swept from power. I don't know whether there are elections due, but the best that you could say about Pluto on the midheaven is that something dramatic has to change within the government because it's no longer serving the people. The planet Uranus is sitting on a Uranus ascendant, on an Aries ascendant, which is a very major shake-up, very major shake-up. And Uranus governs earthquakes, and Pluto governs subterranean activities, governs revolutions, the combination. We've been seeing the effect of the Uranus-Pluto square for the last 3 or 4 years on Earth, and now nature's taken over. When I look at where this chart fits around the Philippines, I notice that Uranus and Pluto, they cross in the main island. I think it's called Luzon. The main island on which Manila is based, and they cross pretty much in the centre of the island, not far from Manila and not far from something called Quezon City. So it seems fairly clear to me that there's either a lot of decay or a lot of corruption, or a lot of things that are simply not working already, and that collapse, if you like, of life in the Philippines is liable to come undone quite dramatically. Could come undone through major shift of the plates. I'm not an expert on the plates. I've looked at the maps, but I don't have it in front of me here. But I have a feeling that, you see, what we're talking about here is the Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire that sweeps down through Japan, where the Pacific plate meets the Asian plate, and I think there's a particular Philippine plate too. I have a feeling that the Philippines is where 3 plates meet. I have a feeling that's the case. In any event, Uranus, the planet of tectonic change and major, sudden, rapid changes in fortune, is affecting the Philippines, and the government looks like it's in it could be a slow collapse or a fast collapse, or a slow or a fast decay, and this focuses particularly around Luzon, around Manila and Quezon City. Yes, doesn't look like an easy chart for the Philippines. One of the visions that I had very recently at the Vesak, during the Vesak full moon, I was meditating, and I had very specific mention of the fact that a submarine base in the South Pacific, I thought it was the South, could have been the Central Pacific Ocean, was going to be destroyed by water. And in my mind's eye, as I saw this image happen, I had the sense that it was an American submarine base, and I thought that the water was coming from tsunami-like activity. But in any event, there were waves, large waves of water, effectively causing major disruption at a submarine base. Subsequent to this, I went onto Google and had a bit of a look to see what I could find. What were the submarine bases in the Pacific? And I discovered that there was one sort of on the Chinese coast, and there's one out in more in the Central Pacific. But the largest submarine base is on an island called Guam, which is 4 hours west of the Philippines. And so I just bear that in mind as I look at this Philippines chart. One of the things that's affecting the Earth, and particularly the Pacific, in these sort of months to come, from the solstice point over the next few months, are increasingly wild weather and unpredictable ocean and water events. Some places may experience this as no water, others may experience it as deluges or storms or cyclones or typhoons. Coincidentally, I had this vision and this very specific instruction about the submarine base. It was the 3rd of May, the day before the exact full moon, and today is I think it might be the 12th. I'll just have a look on my calendar here. No, today's the 14th of May, so that was 10 days ago. This morning on the internet, I noticed that there's a hurricane building and heading straight for Guam, the naval base. Anyway, that's as a bit of an aside. I was a bit astounded to see how specific my spiritual guides were in talking about the submarine base, and it hasn't reached Guam yet, but it's heading in that direction and gathering speed. In any event, something much larger associated with major tectonic activity is potentially on the cards for the Philippines. And one of the other impressions that I had during my Vesak meditation was a very strong message that Tonga was going to receive a 6.5 earthquake. Now that's quite a specific, very specific, a 6.5, not just an earthquake and not just somewhere in the Pacific. They said Tonga 6.5. And so when I look at the map of the Pacific Islands, I notice that there are many Pacific Islands. There are the Solomons, there's New Guinea, there's New Britain, there's little tiny Tonga, there's Vanuatu, and further west there's Kiribati. And there's been a lot of call for urgent intervention on behalf of the Pacific Islanders who are at risk of losing their homes and becoming environmental refugees as the oceans rise. And certainly when I look at the chart here, I was trying to find Tonga. It's very, very tiny. Let me see if I can find it here. It's I found it in my atlas, but can I find it? Let me see if I can find it. So the capital of Tonga is Nuku'alofa, and it's 21 degrees south and 175 degrees west. And when I look at the chart focused upon Tonga, I see Chiron, the planet of crisis, in the sign of Pisces, governing the Pacific Ocean and governing crisis with emotional matters and a lot of suffering, and also to do with the ocean. And Chiron's exactly conjunct the midheaven. So as an astrologer, I think that this has got a very strong indication for oceanic invasion that removes the identity of Tonga as such. And then in the chart there's a Mercury-Neptune square. Now this Mercury-Neptune square is to do with chaotic, unpredictable weather events involving high-speed winds and storms that change direction. You think they're going one way and they turn and they go another way. and then Neptune in Pisces, which governs oceanic rises and falls and floods and tsunamis. And this very difficult pattern of wind and storm and water in the ocean is impacting the ascendant, the Gemini ascendant in Tonga. Now, I don't know whether Tonga's just got one island. I think there's a small chain of islands that are all part of Tonga. And so I'm inclined to think that at least one of the Tongan islands is going to be disrupted by a major weather event, and as my guides were telling me, a 6.5 earthquake. And if this is the case, and I certainly hope this is not true, but if this is the case, that the astrological details bear up the fact that there is suffering and a wind event and a rain and an ocean event impacting Tonga from the winter solstice through till the spring solstice, it's possible that we will see environmental refugees. And the Pacific Island nations have been pleading with their larger Oceania nations, this is Australia and New Zealand, for help. And small amounts of help comes, but nowhere near enough. And really Australia is one of the greatest contributors to global warming through our coal. We have a responsibility to support our South Pacific neighbours. I'll move now to look at the chart of New Zealand. Just let me see if I can find that chart on my computer here. And I've cast the New Zealand chart for Wellington, the capital of New Zealand. And again, the same dire pattern of Neptune, the planet of ocean invasion, sitting at the forefront of the government's awareness. It's sitting where the government and the focus for government ought to be. So either we have denial and more fear and propaganda being fed to the unfortunate South Pacific Islanders or the New Zealanders, or we have governments that face facts and deal with the realities. And the reality is that the ocean increasingly is more and more dangerous for the South Pacific Islanders and for New Zealand in particular. I'm just opening up the astrocartography map for New Zealand. And the two islands of New Zealand, they fall between a Saturn line and a Moon line. So I'll talk about the Saturn and the Moon lines in the chart. Saturn's in the last degree of Scorpio. I mentioned it earlier. It's very strongly focused in other regions as well, and it's in the degree of cruelty and the degree of suffering. And generally speaking, when Saturn is in high focus in an individual's chart, then there will be suffering. And this line of suffering sweeps past the North Island, past Whangarei, is I'm pronouncing that right, past Auckland. I think it's very, very close to Gisborne. So it crosses the northeast corner of the North Island of New Zealand, but sweeping in a long arc. So Gisborne is particularly at risk, but anywhere on that northeast coast from sort of, I would have to say from Whangarei all the way down past Auckland to Gisborne are at risk of serious, sobering environmental crisis creating suffering. And now in the natal chart, in the solstice chart that I'm looking at, Saturn, the planet of karma, has a very strong line to Vulcan, the planet associated with volcanoes. And so I would imagine that it's possible that there will be sub-ocean volcanic activity, or I don't know whether Gisborne is a volcanic area, but the ocean off the coast of the North Island could well erupt with volcanic activity. And then the only other line is the moon to the IC. Now the moon governs ordinary people, the general populace, and it touches the part of the South Island that is sort of the very southwestern tip, sort of west of Queenstown, in I think what is National Park area. Now this moon line has a very strong link in the chart, a hard, difficult aspect up to Pluto. So I get the sense that New Zealand is in for tectonic change, possibly as a result of volcanic activity in the Pacific Ocean, and that both islands, but more particularly, I would have to say the North Island, is at greater risk. Yes. And of course, New Zealand's still trying to recover from the devastating earthquake in 2011 that shook and destroyed Christchurch. Yes, but my concern would be for the ocean to invade aspects of both islands, but more especially the North Island, as a result of tectonic upheaval or volcanic activity, which could cause enormous rethink of government policies and possibly great disarray within the government. Or at the very least it could be that New Zealand's not impacted, but that the environmental refugees from the South Pacific come pouring into New Zealand and or Australia. And any of those things could be true. Either way, it appears that New Zealand's going into recession. I don't know whether New Zealand's already in recession as Australia is, but certainly the economic impact of what looks like severe environmental change in close proximity or on its doorstep is causing major economic crisis in New Zealand. Yes, and the chart for New Zealand has Taurus rising, and Taurus governs the land and the mountain ranges, and Taurus is governed by Venus, and the Venus in the chart is connected to Pluto. So effectively what I'm seeing there is that the stability, the physical stability, the economic stability, the security of New Zealand is going through a seismic shift. It could be that it's economic, it could be that it's as a result of ocean changes, or it could be as a result of tectonic, could be volcanic changes in the South Pacific, or all three. That's all I have to say for the possible changes in New Zealand in the second half of 2015. This is the third in a series of discussions around the great change and the mighty impact that's occurring all around the world. Stay in touch through my YouTube. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Stay in touch with me through Star Astrology Healing. This work is really mundane astrology, looking at the planet as a whole, but my primary work is with individuals to help people to navigate their lives, their finances, their health, their relationships, to understand the purpose and meaning of your life. Astrology is a brilliant and a wonderful tool, and I can work with people from all around the planet, and I'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned. Bye for now.